One doctor said that this is probably the worst wound he'd ever seen.
She wasn't just driven for driven's sake, she was driven for a purpose.
I get second chance at life now.
In a world where emotional challenges can become overwhelming burdens, stories of overcoming adversity and hope remind us of the immense power of the human spirit. Katie Stubblefield, a young woman who faced a moment of deep despair, teaches us how even the most difficult situations can transform into paths toward recovery and strength. Katie went through what many face, a period of uncertainty and emotional pain. In an instant that would change her life forever, Katie made a decision that would mark her for the rest of her days. But her story doesn't end there. What followed was an extraordinary journey of struggle, resilience, and a clear message. Even in the darkest moments, there is always hope. In this video, we will not only explore Katie's brave recovery, but we will also use her story to reflect on the importance of suicide prevention, empathy, and mutual support.
Fight for her life, not just to be alive, but to live.
Diana and Deborah.
Okay.
Our intention is to raise awareness about how we can reach out to those who are silently suffering under the weight of their emotions. Because no one is alone, and there are always people willing to help. Stay with us as we dive into a story that not only touches the heart, but also inspires us to look toward the future with faith and optimism. Hope is never lost, and this video is proof of that. Katie Stubblefield's happy childhood. Katie Stubblefield was born in 1996 in Lakeland, Florida, into a family full of love and purpose. From the very first day of her life, her world was shaped by the warmth of a Christian home, where her father, a devoted minister, and her mother, a kind teacher, provided a home filled with solid values and affection. Katie grew up surrounded by laughter and teachings, with a bright and brave personality that quickly captivated her family. From a very young age, Katie stood out for her mental sharpness, which made family conversations enjoyable and filled with laughter. The blend of Sunday songs and the jokes of schoolmates became the soundtrack of her life, an uncomplicated life, but full of meaningful moments. Katie loved simple things, chasing butterflies in the garden, playing soccer with her friends, or enjoying a quiet afternoon with her family. Her boundless energy not only made her excel in sports, but also in the classroom. Medals and awards in her studies were common, as her intelligence and dedication made her shine in every activity she took on. However, what truly made her special was not only her academic success or athletic ability, but her unwavering spirit. Katie was known for her contagious humor, kindness, and her ability to form genuine connections with others. From a young age, she carried the virtues her parents instilled in her, such as the importance of serving others and always offering a comforting word. Her ability to listen and offer support made her a loyal friend and someone beloved by all. But as in every story, even in moments of happiness, life has its shadows, which in her case would appear in the years to come. As Katie approached high school, her family went through a major transition, which would mark the beginning of a significant change in her life. Katie's early teenage years were marked by a process of constant moves. First, her family moved from Lakeland, Florida to Owensboro, Kentucky during her second year of high school. A few months later, they moved again, this time to Oxford, Mississippi, which meant another adjustment for young Katie. The constant adapting to new schools, new friends, and new environments created a sense of rootlessness that slowly began to affect her emotional stability. In addition to these difficulties, Katie also began to experience health problems. As the moves complicated her social life, her body began presenting new challenges. She started suffering from chronic gastrointestinal issues that led her to undergo several surgeries, including the removal of her appendix and gallbladder. These health problems not only affected her physical well-being, but also added more weight to her already difficult teenage years. As if that wasn't enough, the Stubblefield family faced another betrayal that would be a devastating blow to Katie. In the year she was approaching her senior year of high school, the school principal decided not to renew the contract of Alicia, Katie's mother, who had worked there with great dedication. Alicia had trusted him, and the firing was a deep wound for the family. Katie, who had always been close to her mother, felt a profound sense of disappointment and pain at the injustice of this decision, which only exacerbated her already fragile emotional state. This series of moves, health problems, and betrayals created an emotionally draining environment for Katie, who for the first time began to feel isolated and lost. The young woman, who had once stood out for her vitality and optimism, now faced an emotional whirlwind that pushed her into uncertainty. Activities she once loved, like soccer, began to lose their appeal, while the young girl struggled to find a place she could truly call home. The combination of these challenges formed a scenario where the bright spirit that had characterized Katie during her childhood slowly began to fade, overwhelmed by the circumstances surrounding her. The addiction to new routines, lack of close friends, and emotional pressure acted like shadows that began to eclipse her ability to find joy in her daily life. Although Katie's high school years were filled with adversity, they were also a formative phase that left a mark on her personality and her outlook on life. As the months passed, the young woman fought to find balance, to reconnect with the spirit that had defined her in her childhood. But despite her efforts, the weight of accumulated experiences continued to add obstacles that would shape her path toward an uncertain future. And while Katie's world slowly crumbled around her, what she did not yet know was that these years of struggle and disillusionment would lay the foundation for the tragic event that would change her life forever. The tragedy. Katie Stubblefield's life changed forever on March 25, 2014, at the age of 18, when an impulsive decision marked a devastating turn in her fate. That day, after discovering that her boyfriend had cheated on her, the breakup left her submerged in deep emotional distress. Desperate and hurt, Katie went to her older brother Robert's house in Oxford, Mississippi, seeking refuge. But as the hours passed, her pain seemed to intensify. While walking around town and sending frantic messages, sadness and rage consumed her. Concerned about his sister's state, Robert decided to speak with their mother. However, while he was out of the house, Katie, trapped in her despair, made a fatal decision. She went to Robert's hunting rifle, placed the barrel under her chin, and pulled the trigger. The sound of the shot echoed through the house, and Robert, upon hearing the explosion, ran toward the bathroom, fearing the worst. Finding the door locked, his desperation grew. After forcing it open, he discovered Katie lying on the floor, her face severely altered by the consequences of the shot. The impact of seeing his sister in that state was devastating. Without hesitation, he called emergency services and tried to do everything possible to save her, hoping there was still time to prevent the irreversible. The news of the tragedy spread quickly, leaving friends and family in mourning. The young Katie, full of energy and dreams, was no longer the same. The devastating image of what happened that afternoon left a deep mark on all who knew her. No one could comprehend how such a deep moment of despair had led to such an extreme act. However, that tragedy not only marked the end of a life as it was known, but it also marked the beginning of a long and difficult recovery process for Katie. Despite the physical and emotional scars left on her, the tragedy became a turning point in her life, allowing her to discover new reasons to move forward and find a second chance amidst the darkness. Severe injuries. Katie Stubblefield's injuries were a brutal reflection of the tragedy she had just lived through. The bullet that passed through her face not only altered her life, but nearly robbed her of the opportunity for a future. In that fateful moment, the damage she suffered was so severe that its consequences would follow Katie for years to come. The single bullet she shot at herself entered her face, almost completely destroying her oral cavity, jaw, and the front of her face. The projectile passed through her mouth and nasal cavity before exiting her skull between her eyebrows. Fortunately, it grazed the brain tissue but did not fully penetrate it. However, the damage was devastating. She lost part of her jaw, the bones in her face were shattered, and she suffered severe destruction of her nose and sinuses. Her eyes, though intact, were severely damaged. This damage resulted from a single shot, and the severity of her injuries not only threatened her life, but also completely altered her physical identity. Despite the unbearable circumstances, the paramedic team that arrived quickly on the scene did not give up. Their swift reaction was key to keeping her alive. Every second counted, and the first responders worked tirelessly to stabilize her. The urgency of the situation was palpable, and her life hung by a thread. She was rapidly transported to a nearby hospital in Oxford, Mississippi, where the doctors struggled to stabilize her while complications mounted. The first few minutes were crucial. The medical professionals had to face a series of unique challenges with this type of injury. Katie was intubated, placed on a ventilator, and it was discovered that the injury had affected her pituitary gland, optic nerves, and the frontal lobes of her brain. As a result of this damage, her hormone, calcium, and sodium levels became imbalanced, further putting her life at risk. Those initial moments were a race against time, trying to keep her alive. With the immediate crisis under control, the next step was monumental reconstruction. The doctors decided that treatment needed to continue in a hospital with more advanced capabilities. Thus, Katie was transferred by helicopter to a hospital in Memphis with a Level 1 trauma center capable of providing the type of care her injuries required. Katie's family, consisting of her parents, Rob and Alicia, arrived by her side as soon as possible, but by that point, Katie was already in surgery, the first of many to follow over the years. The severity of her injuries was such that the surgeons made no promises of success, but were committed to doing everything possible to save her. The main goal was to ensure her survival through the first procedure. After that initial surgery, Katie was transferred to the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio, a world-renowned medical center. The doctors there knew that the local hospital's capabilities were insufficient to handle her case and decided to transfer her to a clinic that had specialists and state-of-the-art technology. This move became a milestone in her recovery. Dr. Brian Gassman, a renowned plastic surgeon in the field of reconstructive surgery, took on Katie's case. This expert, known for tackling complex medical challenges, saw the potential for her recovery, although the situation remained critical. The damage to her face and brain was so severe that the priority in the early stages was her survival, not facial transplants or cosmetic interventions. Katie arrived at the Cleveland Clinic in critical condition. Her injuries were so complex that the doctors were concerned about whether there would be enough viable tissue for the extensive facial reconstruction she needed. During the first meeting with Dr. Gassman, he showed her a 3D image of her head to assess the damage, explaining that the priority was to save her life and address the immediate risks of infections and seizures caused by the exposure of her brain. The initial surgery was led by Dr. Gassman and his team, and although the possibility of a facial transplant was on the horizon, the first goal was to stabilize her condition. Advanced technology, such as 3D printing, was used to model her jaw from CT scans of her older sister, Olivia McKay. These 3D models would serve as the foundation for reconstructing her face. Innovative techniques marked a step toward recovery, showing that the limits of reconstructive surgery were being tested in new and exciting ways. Although the battle for her survival was not over, Katie began to receive signs that, despite everything, there was a light at the end of the tunnel. Not only had her life been saved against all odds, but medical science was advancing alongside her recovery, opening the door to new possibilities for her and potentially for others facing similar situations. Finding a definitive solution. The magnitude of Katie Stubblefield's injuries was so severe and complex that the doctors faced an unprecedented challenge. After surviving the initial impact of the gunshot, the priority was to save her life. But what lay ahead was an even more difficult battle: to rebuild her face, her identity, and her overall well-being. Though the injuries were devastating, the medical team that treated her did not lose hope, and Dr. Brian Gassman, who led her treatment from the beginning, was committed to finding an innovative solution. Traditional treatment options were limited for such an extreme case. Katie had not only lost a large portion of her face, but she had also suffered deep damage to her brain and other vital organs. It was then that Dr. Gassman and his team decided to look beyond conventional treatments. Discussions were held with experts from around the world, aiming to find a solution that could restore Katie's life and dignity. Global communication between doctors and surgeons was key in finding a path to hope. During these consultations, an innovative concept began to take shape: facial transplantation. Though it was a complex and risky procedure, the transplant offered a possibility to restore Katie's identity in a way that conventional reconstructive procedures could not. As the details were discussed and the risks weighed, a radical and unconventional idea emerged strongly. Facial transplantation was not just an idea, it represented a monumental challenge in the field of reconstructive surgery. It involved a series of complex steps, from medical planning to Katie's emotional preparation to the coordination of specialists from various fields. The team, though aware of the risks involved, knew that only through a collective effort could they overcome the difficulties and give Katie a second chance. Dr. Gassman assembled a multidisciplinary team of 15 specialists, including neurosurgeons, vascular specialists, anesthesiologists, and other healthcare professionals. Cooperation and teamwork were fundamental at every stage of the process. The experts gathered from different fields, focused not only on the surgery itself, but also on Katie's emotional, psychological, and physical well-being. They understood that facial transplantation would not only restore her appearance, but also mark a historic milestone in medicine. Throughout her journey, Katie was surrounded by doctors, nurses, psychologists, and other professionals who offered a holistic approach to her treatment. Although the challenges were formidable, the unity of the team and their tireless dedication created an environment of hope and collaboration. The shared goal of restoring Katie's life became the driving force that united everyone involved. The psychological aspect of the surgery was just as crucial as the physical ones. Dr. Kaufman, a psychologist experienced in facial transplants, played a pivotal role in Katie's emotional preparation. He began working with her a year before the surgery, helping her explore her feelings and prepare mentally for a procedure that would change her life. The questions were deep and personal. Did Katie truly want to undergo facial transplantation? Was she prepared to face the emotional consequences of such a radical change? Through several conversations with Dr. Kaufman, Katie expressed her determination to go through with the surgery. While there were significant emotional and psychological risks, Katie was resolute in her desire to regain her life, her face, and her identity. The process was long and exhaustive, but her commitment was clear. She knew it would be a challenging path, but she was determined to walk it. In November 2015, after an exhaustive evaluation process, Katie finally signed the consent forms to undergo facial transplantation surgery. This was a crucial moment in her journey, as it marked the beginning of the final stage before the surgery. However, before she could move forward, a suitable donor needed to be found, and it was essential to ensure that Katie was physically and mentally prepared to face the surgery. Finding a donor. The search for a suitable donor for Katie's facial transplant was a monumental challenge. From the beginning, the team led by Dr. Brian Gassman and Dr. Frank Pape faced complications, as Katie's physical characteristics, such as her small stature and age, limited the options. Additionally, due to the urgent nature of other organ transplants, the priority for donors often went to other organs, making it even more difficult to find a match. However, after months of waiting and rigorous evaluations in March 2016, Katie was added to the waiting list for a facial transplant. Finally, in 2018, 3 years after her arrival in Cleveland, the medical team found a suitable donor in Andrea Schneider, a 31-year-old woman who had died from a drug overdose. The preparation for surgery was as meticulous as the search for the donor. Katie and her family underwent thorough psychological evaluations to ensure that everyone was ready to face the magnitude of the operation. Meanwhile, the medical team used advanced technology such as HoloLens to visualize in 3D and virtually rehearse the surgery, simulating every step of the process. This allowed them to anticipate potential problems and perfect the techniques they would use during the operation. Additionally, surgical preparations were rigorous, with strict sterilization protocols and the creation of an operating room equipped to accommodate a team of 11 expert surgeons. The experience of the surgeons, such as Dr. Frank Pape, a key dermatologist and plastic surgeon in the process, was crucial. He used advanced 3D simulations to assist in reconstructing Katie's face, working on precise details to restore both the form and function of her facial features. The surgery not only represented an opportunity to restore Katie's appearance, but also to improve her quality of life. Each member of the team, from neurosurgeons to anesthesiologists, contributed their unique expertise in a collaborative effort to address the challenges that the operation entailed. The night before the surgery, Katie's family and the medical team reflected on the immense step they were about to take. While fear and uncertainty were palpable, so was the determination to change the course of Katie's life. The operation, which involved not only physical reconstruction, but also the restoration of her identity and function, represented a pivotal decision. Ultimately, the process culminated in a decisive moment that could mark a before and after in reconstructive medicine, where hope and science came together to offer Katie a second chance. Surgery Day. On May 4, 2017, a day that had been anticipated for years arrived with an overwhelming emotional weight. As the hospital hallways filled with the vibrant energy of the surgery about to begin, anxiety and hope intertwined in the air. Katie's facial transplant surgery was a historic event, both for her life and for medicine. This day not only marked a potentially transformative breakthrough for her, but also a milestone in reconstructive surgery. As midday approached, the medical team gathered, meticulously reviewing every step of the procedure. In the operating room, there was complete silence, broken only by the sound of surgical instruments being prepared with precision. Dr. Brian Gastman, who was leading the operation, held a final meeting to ensure that all team members understood their roles in this complex process. There was a palpable concentration in the room, as everyone knew that the success of the surgery depended on their skill and coordination. Outside the operating room, Katie's family and friends kept vigil, their thoughts and prayers focused on the success of the surgery. The emotion was contagious as the hospital staff shared in the collective wish to see Katie recover not only her face, but also her life. In the surgical room, Katie's face was carefully placed on a surgical tray, prepared to receive the donor's facial graft. The face, stripped of life and blood, looked almost unrecognizable, a surreal transition between what it had been and what it could be. This moment was captured on video, symbolizing the gravity of the intervention and the radical transformation that Katie was about to undergo. The team, led by Dr. Frank Pape, began the transplant process. Katie was prepared to receive the donor's face, which would make this surgery one of the most complex and advanced in the history of facial surgery. The surgery began at 8 a.m. in a perfectly coordinated surgical choreography. During the first hours, each incision was made with extreme precision, and the monitors in the room vibrated with Katie's vital signs, constantly reminding the team of the delicacy of the procedure. As with any high-risk surgery, complications were possible at any moment, but the team remained calm and focused. The vascular surgeons carefully connected the blood vessels, ensuring that blood circulation in Katie's face was continuous and efficient. Meanwhile, the neurosurgeons monitored the nervous responses, while the plastic surgeons worked to sculpt the donor's face to fit perfectly with Katie's. The surgery was meticulous and challenging, but the unity and expertise of the team were reflected in their coordination. As the operation progressed, Dr. Gassman and Dr. Pape consulted with Rob and Alicia, Katie's parents, to keep them informed of the progress and to discuss any necessary adjustments. During the surgery, the difficult decision was made to change the initial plan and adopt a Plan B. This modification, although risky, promised to improve both the form and functionality of Katie's face. Each option was carefully evaluated, considering the surgical risks and Katie's aesthetic preferences, as she had already been consulted about what she hoped for from the surgery. The procedure, which lasted 31 hours, culminated in a spectacular result. 100% of Katie's face was replaced with the donor's face. This included not only the facial tissues, but also 2/3 of her lower jaw, her upper jaw, and the area beneath her eyes. The surgeons had to work especially hard to ensure that the blood vessels in the donor's face were successfully integrated, allowing blood to flow efficiently through the new facial structure. As the surgery came to a close, a collective sigh of relief swept through the room. Katie's vital signs, monitored throughout the process, showed that her body had started to adapt to her new face, and the surgical team knew that although extremely complex, the surgery had been a success. This facial transplant was a true testament to skill, dedication, and innovation in medicine. The surgery not only restored Katie's physical appearance, but also offered her the chance to rebuild her life. Despite the inherent risks and emotional challenges, Katie's bravery and the surgical team's expertise laid the foundation for what would be a long and arduous recovery process, with the hope that her life would be forever changed. Postoperative recovery. Katie's recovery was a challenging yet deeply transformative journey. After the facial transplant, Katie regained vital functions such as breathing, chewing, and swallowing, and was able to express emotions more effectively. The 17 additional surgeries at the Cleveland Clinic required to complete her recovery not only restored her physical capabilities, but also had a significant impact on her psychological and social well-being, helping to accelerate her adaptation. 1 year after the main surgery, with no signs of rejection and significant improvements in her speech, Katie began to progress more rapidly, overcoming the side effects of immunosuppressive medications. The resilience of her family was essential throughout this process. Despite the challenges, such as vision loss and the need for additional surgeries, Katie remained steadfast. She is learning Braille and plans to study online, with the hope of becoming a counselor or teacher. Additionally, she is dedicated to raising awareness about suicide and its prevention. Her story of resilience has not only brought her towards independence, but also inspires others to face their own challenges with determination. Katie has found a new purpose in life, focusing on helping others and making a positive difference in society. Katie's legacy goes beyond her own life. Her case has set new standards in medical science and changed the perspective on facial transplants. Her story is a testament to the human capacity to overcome adversity, offering hope to those facing great challenges. Katie and her family, in addition to being advocates for mental and physical well-being, have helped many find support, reminding them that despair is not the end and that with the right support, healing and thriving are possible. Her journey continues to be a source of inspiration,